I can leave it unmuted anyways.
It would be getting there.
Did your icon pop up yet?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consent agenda, the recommended action is approve the following items which are included in the consent agenda. 6A, the meeting minutes from the reorganizational meeting. 7A, the coaching staff for the fall 2021. 7D, reapproval of the management confidential contracts. And 8A, special education. May I have a motion to accept this consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Daniel. Second by Colleen. Is everybody okay with those items?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? Oops. Got our electronic.
5 yes.
Okay, 5 yes, 0 no, the motion passes. Good of the cause? Okay. On to reports, budget performance report. Dana?
Okay. So this is for the last month of the fiscal year. You'll see month to date, we were unfavorable for the month, $600,000. Expenditures, we were favorable by $413,000. Year to date, about 90, almost 97% of our revenues come in compared to 100% last year. Expenditures, 90% in as opposed to 100% last year. Still trending the way it has been the last few months in terms of what's projected. You'll see right now. This is a perfect example of everything's a snapshot. I say that just about every month as to when things happen. Because when you look at this, you say, oh, we have a projected about $1.1 million. But when you look at the piece of paper unaudited, it's about $730,000. One is more projection and when I run it versus more actual and also when I look at it. Perfect example is I looked at it today and there's $90,000 more in revenue than when I ran the unaudited version. The month of June typically stays open. Our schedule is much longer because of, we're getting ready for the audits and revenue comes in. The state's revenue is still coming in. All of our title funds and things like that comes in. We really probably will not actually close out June until probably September. And that's typically what happens every year. That's when we get our audits are done and everything has been looked at. So revenue is still coming in and we're still trying to close out the expense side of it. So that's why when you look at it, there's a discrepancy because one's projected and it's truly a snapshot of it. But the perfect case is we're still bringing in more than what we're spending. That's always good. Questions on the budget performance report?
The 3.4% that's we've collected so far, is that equate to the 600? I doubt it would. It says that 96.6% of the annual budget has been collected.
Yes, because when you look at it in the end, it's about when it all comes in. We're still waiting on some CARES money that's supposed to come in. Last time I looked, the state still owed us about $400,000. It's when they make the payments. And also it's when it comes in and then it gets recorded within our software system.
Okay.
So it can make it to the bank, but then when it actually gets put in and gets, in essence, recorded in our ledger. So there's always that timing thing. That's why I say that it's always a snapshot because of it. And particularly the month of June, even more so because of that, because all the end of the year stuff, revenue is still trickling in. It's when the state decides to pay for it. I just got something yesterday. Our title funds are coming in, so those are being paid. I sent all of those final reports towards the end of June. So it takes time for the state to review them, process them, send it back, and then eventually it makes it into our bank accounts. So that's kind of, where usually the discrepancy is.
What's the debt service principal, 4,800, what does that mean here? Down on item number 6.
That is, we look at that, was paid a little more than $4,800 more in a principal, our debt principal, than we did last year.
Okay,
Is really what that means.
okay.
All of our debt services, again, that was, we made our bond payment, our van payment of about $1.5 million, June 25th. So depending on how it hits, it takes a little bit to get it into record it is what it comes down to. But that's our biggest payment of the year. Usually by the end of June is when our final debt payments are made. So that's basically just saying we paid about $4,800 more than last year. Other questions? Treasury reports, kind of the same. You look at it, again, I talk about a snapshot. Our insured cash sweep is about $11 million. In reality, as things come in, and then Betsy reconciles all of this, even though this is the end, for June 30th, it still keeps going. We had a couple of large movements of money at the end of June that didn't quite hit its. Our cash sweep is actually down to about $8 million. Is what it comes down to. I know, get down to single numbers. I was like, oh my goodness, we're below $10 million in our cash sweep. A little over almost not quite $4 million of that is the capital projects that we still have. So it is separate, but it gets all lumped together for this. But about $4 million of it is capital project, and the remaining is in our account, our general accounts. So still looking healthy. We do have that nice ability. This is typically the time of year where school districts are cash light and debt heavy. You're starting to start paying everything. And it's not unusual for districts to take out bans, for tax revenue to generate the money to pay for things. We are fortunate where we don't have to do that. We have $4 million sitting in our cash account that gets us through the summer before taxes start to get collected beginning of September. So we're in a good financial position because of that. Probably the lowest outstanding checks number you've seen in a while, which is nice. And $380,000 of that is because of BOCES. So again, we got their last payment. It was beginning of July for our June invoice, and that's why that's still outstanding. We paid it right at the end of the month. But otherwise, just like in previous months, everything is reconciled, and we're still looking pretty good. Questions on the Treasury report?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more to go.
One
One
more.
more to go.
Yep.
This is the unaudited in terms of where, our fund balance. At the very top, the $2.384 million, that number comes right from our audited financial statements. So at the end of last year, June 30th or July 1st of this fiscal year, that's what we had as an unassigned fund balance. We've actually earned $19.29 million. It's, like I said a few minutes ago, it's actually $90,000 more. When I looked at it today, we've brought in the $90,000 more in revenue. The expenditures, the 18.285, that's actual expenditures. The 280 is encumbrances. So those are basically either outstanding bills or outstanding POs. And typically what we start to do is those outstanding POs end up getting liquidated. We budget for them at the beginning of the year. Probably the best example is town of North Elba for fuel. And we will encumber basically the entire budgeted amounts for the year and just have one open PO for the entire year. Once it's all done, once we get our final payment in June, if there's anything left over, then that PO gets liquidated. So we're in the process of going through that right now. Some have been liquidated, others have not. Some are outstanding. So that's where we have $280,000 in encumbrances. About a month or so ago, that number was more like $500,000. So we're in the process of liquidating open POs and paying everything as things come in. So that number will come down. What you'll see is, I think you'll see a revenue fluctuate, and then the encumbrances eventually will go away. Some of that will get actually carried over to next year because of when it gets paid. And it's incurred in this year, but it gets moved over. So when you look at it, as it stands right now, when I ran this last week or so, we're sitting at about $731,000 in, I guess, additional revenue at this point. And those are truly actuals. Here's what we've actually brought in. Here's what we've spent and/or are encumbered. That encumbrance number will go down. We'll see an increase in revenue. I do anticipate that number going up. And that's where you can kind of look at the differences. If this is saying 731,000, this is saying 1.1. This was the budget performance was built, and there was a larger encumbrance. The encumbrances aren't necessarily factored into the budget performance. It looks at really actuals and then projects. It doesn't look at what is encumbered, which when we do this, we factor it in as an expense because it is tagged to something specifically. We made some larger purchases in early June that are still coming in. We had a wish list going since probably February and March of items to kind of tick off. Some additional Chromebooks, some additional MacBooks for the teachers, some smart boards were being purchased for both buildings as well. Some of that money, a new Mac lab for the elementary school, but that's going to be offset with Smart School Bond Act. We have some larger purchases. We've ended up purchasing a small tractor for the elementary school to help with snow removal, as well as tending to the trails, they don't have to load up the truck and then drive the truck into the trails. They can use a tractor with a front loader to bring the wood chips and all that. So just kind of making it a little easier. A sweeper on it so that we get that small dusting rather than shoveling on the sidewalks. They can just sweep it and take less time. Questions on the audit? Our audit is scheduled for the first week of August. August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th is when Felling and Associates will be here to go through the books. So we are in the process of putting all that together.
And that's our external audit, right? So the state audit, we still haven't heard from.
We have not heard from the state, even though they sent a letter in, I think, in March, saying, be ready, get ready.
Yeah.
Get ready. That was in March.
We're ready. Whenever they come.
I heard they went sick leave.
Any questions? Or all set?
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
Dr. Catania,
All right,
once
so
again, we'll hear from you.
one more time. Unmute myself. So I wanted to talk about two things. One is I wanted to follow up last meeting's information with SAT averages for the class of 2021. The last meeting I provided you with graduation information and then Regents exam scores, but this time I have SAT averages. This is a very different kind of year because of the pandemic, as I guess has been the case with everything. So why don't we start out with that? I posted a document in my superintendent's area that you can see in the executive content. It's relatively brief. What the document shows is the percentage of students who, of our graduating class who took the SAT. Typically, we also have a percentage of students, often lower, that take the ACT, which is the other college entrance exam. But this is not a typical year. So we didn't have any students take the ACT this year. However, we did have 61% of our students take the SAT. And while that's a little bit lower than the average that you see there, it's actually much higher than we anticipated. And the reason for that, of course, most of the SAT test dates were canceled throughout the year. And so this group of seniors had very few opportunities to take the test. However, they did have one very important opportunity, and that was our school day test. And you might remember we signed on to that a few years ago. The board agreed to cover the costs of the school day SAT testing. And it's been a tremendous advantage, no year more so than this year, when our kids, probably that number would have been 10 to 20% rather than 61%. So 61% of our seniors took the SAT. And then you can see the averages. Our students averaged 566 in English reading and writing, as compared to a national average of 528 statewide as well. In math, our average was 548 as compared to the national average of 523. The total average 1114 as compared to the 1051 average. If you look down below, you can just see a little bit more of the historical. The first graph you see has the past 6 years of scores, and you can see, you know, it's pretty consistent overall, typically, you know, like this year, above the average in scores. So I always like to point out when we have differing information, right? So our SAT scores, our Regents exam scores tend to be pretty favorable. They tend to demonstrate that our students are doing pretty well in school on these exams, at least. And that's not the case, of course, with those grades 3 through 8 exams. And I know that we often look at those exam scores and we see low scores, but there's not a real clear correlation. It's pretty consistent that our students do much better on their high school exams than they do on these grade 3 through 8 exams. So, and this is just another example of that. In terms of the participation rate, you can see that's the second graph down below, that typically that 60% was about what our students, about the percentage of our students who used to participate in the SAT. It dropped a little bit there, but then you can see the first year that we implemented the school day testing, and that was the 1920 class of graduates. So the class of 2020, over 80% of them did take this test. And this year at 61%, right, it looks a little bit more like the average, but again, like I said before, not an average year. So any questions about our student performance on their college entrance exams? Okay. So, you know, I thought I would take the liberty to maybe do a little historical retrospective on the school district, because as you know, this is going to be my last time providing a superintendent's report. So I thought it might be a nice time to just sort of look back and then maybe think forward, right? You know, when I think about my time here, right? So my experience here, not quite as long as some of the other people in the room who've grown up here and have multiple generations. But my time here started in 1997. I was the high school counselor here. And I remember that time period. I was here from 97 to 09 as the school counselor. I remember that as a period of much positive change in the school district. And I think that you would hear that from most people who experienced the school during that time. We increased programs, we increased course offerings, and our facilities grew, right? That was when we put in the new gymnasium. That was when the elementary school added in the wing. It was a positive time. And I bring that up because sometimes if you just think about the next period, which was definitely a setback time for our school district, you might see only this time period, as sort of like an aberration, this most recent one, where I think we've returned to that steady positive change. But really, what I think that we've done is we're more, I think when you look at that period in between from about 2009 to about 2012, when we had the economic crisis, the Great Recession, and then in our school district, we had a certain amount of upheaval, especially in the administration. And so that was really a tougher time here. I think the last 8 years, we've seen a return to that steady improvement. So I just wanted to talk about how this time period and that earlier time period sort of connect. And so we saw that earlier time period demonstrated a lot of improvement. And I think you've seen that again in most recent times. So I wanted to mention some examples. Okay, so we definitely saw a shift from a period of instability and some skepticism about our school district coming from our community as well as from our alumni, and that was really somewhat troubling, to a shift to stability and trust. And I think that is one of the accomplishments of the last number of years. By the way, when I say this, I hope I don't sound like I'm tooting my own horn. That's really not my point. My point is that, yes, I was here, but we had a number of changes at that time. We had a whole new administrative team come in 2013. Dana Wood was a part of that team. Teresa Lindsay was part of that team. Brian Latala was part of that team. Originally at the elementary school, later Sonia Franklin. Sarah Allen became the CSE chair. We had teacher turnover. We've had a lot of people contributing to the positive changes here. So when I say a shift from instability and skepticism to stability and trust, that was a collective effort. And actually, I would argue that it probably started with some changes on the school board. And so we had school board, a shift on the school board that was a real positive shift, and then a shift in the administration as well as in the faculty and staff at large, where I think you saw some changes. What came out of that? Well, one of the big ones was the universal pre-K program, right? So we went from having no school-based pre-K to a universal pre-K through the statewide UPK grant. So that grant has funded all children in the school district to attend pre-K 4 for free. And that was a new opportunity for a lot of people around here. Other things, we founded the Educational Opportunity Fund, and that is our private philanthropic fund that continues to grow and is intending to institute programs that are going to really try and help narrow that opportunity gap. Other things, we were on the focus list, which was actually a sign of potential school failure, and that's how it was worded. And at the height of the age of accountability, that we were on a list that showed a school district that could potentially be failing its students. We got off that list, and we haven't been back on that list. And so we have navigated around those accountability factors. That's not to say we're perfect. That's not to say all of our data reflects the most outstanding school district in the state or the nation. But we are in good shape academically as well as financially, because we also are very financially strong. You just heard a few reports from Dana Wood. Thanks to Dana Wood, Leonard Sowers before him, and all the people that contribute to that, we are in a financial position that is far more stable than we were 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, when we had some issues come up. Other examples, we had a graduation rate in 2012 that was 78%. As a matter of fact, it was reported at 73%, which made us look like quite a marginal school district, and that was troubling. The difference from 73 to 78 was data mistake, and then since then, we've been averaging above 90% for a graduation rate. And I think that's a representation of some of the changes that have gone on. Other things we've done, we've expanded special education inclusion practices. Over 80% of our students with disabilities are included in the mainstream class. And that's a real standout factor for us. Other things, we established tenure assessment standards. That's for our new faculty. We built relationships with the Birth to 3 Alliance, as well as, and that's for the youngest children, but also with Upward Bound for children trying to prepare for college and actually towards graduating from college, as well as the Foundation for Excellent Schools. So we've worked with a number of outside agencies to try and support our students. And then there are the capital improvements, right? So back 20, 21, 22 years ago, when we put in the gym and the other capital improvements in the school district, since then we had a lot of infrastructure decay. And this capital project, while not always fancy, has really improved our school district overall, right? So we restructured a lot of our failing, structural pieces, but in addition to that, we built in some enhancements like the auditorium here, like the entrances and the offices in the elementary school. And then we built in a lot of security, right? Because during this time, right, we also have an era of fear and insecurity in schools. And so we've been able to put in some security pieces that I think build in a lot of confidence and have really helped us sort of recognize that we're doing everything we can to keep our students safe. A couple of those with the capital project, we put in protective glass and secure entrances, and you're probably aware of that. But also the whole camera system. 4 or 5 years ago, we did not have really access to any cameras in immediate time. Now we can access dozens, and I don't know how many dozens of cameras throughout the school district, and we're still expanding on that. So, and we use those cameras all the time, and I think what we use them often to observe small things, right? And I think small things probably prevent big things, but we're prepared with those cameras, as well as with some of those structural improvements to benefit our students and our staff to keep our schools safe. What other things? We've had overwhelming support for our annual budgets, right? Every year, 80% or more of our people are voting to support our budgets. So we're proposing budgets that are reasonable, and people are supporting them, and yet we're also able to run our school district, to do it well, and to build the kind of additional fund balances for additional financial security that Dana mentioned earlier. That kind of financial security. We've improved curriculum in a number of different ways. We've also instituted a teacher-led professional development plan, and that means that we have a committee all years except the pandemic, of course, so a committee of people, teacher-driven, faculty-led, that determines what our professional development goals are going to be and what the practices are going to be and what some of the offerings are going to be. And that's different, and that's been really beneficial. We made reducing the opportunity gap a central goal for the entire district. That term now is commonplace, right? We use it here at the school board level. We use it in the schools. People know what it means. People know it when they see it. And that's really important. And then last, but certainly not least, is this past year, right? We did everything we could to maintain our schools open for all of our students. And that set us apart from a number of other school districts. So as a school district, I think that we're really strong. I think that we're in a good, strong position. And I think that our trajectory is upward. And I think that that is a good thing. And that is not a new thing. That's been going on for a long time, as well as for these last 7-8 years. However, remember, that doesn't mean that we stop, right? So we're all here giving our all to our school district, but we're also only here temporarily, right? So I leave, but others leave the board, and others leave other positions, teachers come and go. our school district continues on. So our job is to leave it as good as we can, to build and improve upon it as much as we can, but the job is never done, right? So some of the things that I've been thinking about that I think deserve more thought and deserve some consideration. One, and I'm not exactly sure what to do about it, is our enrollment loss, right? Our enrollment has declined. We know we've declined about a third in the last 15 years. How do we address that? Well, fortunately, it's not only a school district concern, right? It's an entire community concern. And we know the community is working to build housing in, and hopefully housing brings families and children. My thought has always been, you build it and they will come. So we're trying to make the best school we can, and that our families will come. But of course, there's more to it than that for families. So that's a piece that we should continue to think about. The opportunity gap I mentioned before, right? So we know what it means. We know what it looks like, and we take steps to try and address it. But it's a persistent and unyielding problem. It's not easy. It's not easy to fix. There's no simple solution. How do we continue to make progress in order to look at this situation in our community where we have students who are privileged enough to be able to benefit from all the programs we have, and some who struggle, and we work on that struggle, but it's still there. And so working on that opportunity gap, I think, should continue to be a major goal. Our facilities, right? So our facilities are good, and we've done wonders. We have a beautiful wall, and we have a nice entrance, and we have a lot of improvements in our schools. But there's more that could be done here. And when I think out loud, or I allow myself to dream about facilities, I think about things like a new gymnasium at the elementary school, or an auditorium for the elementary school, those kinds of things. Here's something else I dream about. Maybe after 50 years, 55 years, this building has seen its, maybe it's time for this building to be replaced with something else. And so when I think about what could happen here, I'm not sure, but I think it's something for our school district to think about. What do you do about the administrative building, and how do you maybe connect the administrative building with the middle and high school in a way that maintains what the administrative offices need, but also adds and builds on what we're doing in the schools. So worth thinking about. Increasing academic vibrancy, right? Always something we should be working on in schools. Should never stop with this. But that means right now, in my mind, it means promoting civic engagement. It means building our active and engaging learning experiences, right? We do well. We're doing better than we ever have. We could do more. And then, continuing to build on our community connections, things like field trips, but also things like connections with organizations throughout our community and our expanded community. So there's a lot we could do to continue to build on our positive academic environment, and then to build on our positive school climate. I think our schools are happier places than they've been in a long time. That being said, we need to continue that effort, right? And so that means more effort on reducing harassment and bullying. That also means promoting diversity and inclusion. There's lots of different ways that we can help our students, our faculty and staff, and our families to feel good about being in school. And I'd love to see our school district continue to work on that. These are all goals that we work on. These are all goals where we see improvement, but there's still more to be done. So that's my retrospective and my thinking ahead. I just want to make sure that I say thank you to you, our board members, as well as to our community at large for allowing me to be a part of this effort for all these years, 12 or more years as a school counselor, 8 as a superintendent. So this is my last board meeting, but I can honestly say this has been the greatest honor of my professional career. Thank you for letting me be a part of it. And that is everything. Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't be short on my last meeting for you. I wouldn't want to disappoint any of you, so.
I was actually looking for you to continue.
Oh, is that right?
That's all great
I got
stuff.
4 more notes for you.
Well, thank you very much
Thanks, Rick.
for that and your years of service.
Karen will make sure she gets the suite, and then you can bunk in. Discussion part of the meeting. We have one item, which is board goals and objectives.
Do you want me to do a share screen?
Sure. I'd like to go through these items and see what we can hash out. I don't want to spend everybody's time, but there wasn't a whole lot of activity on board docs, so I will say that I had a lengthy conversation with Martha last night, making sure that she wanted to make sure that her voice was heard. We went through this document piece by piece, and she made some updates if you've looked at it prior to last night. But I actually wrote in here that I agree that with a lot of what she had said, but the first part of this, which is the vision and the first two paragraphs, basically, the first paragraph is directly from the strategic plan. So we can't really go in and start moving things around or adding to that, even though Martha had a very important point about adding. Can you go up just a bit, Karen, please? Oops, other way. She had added in safe, fed, and healthy. That's unfortunately, while it's true, we can't put that in because that's part of our strategic. It's not part of our strategic plan. So then Martha also added something that we've talked about. Coming from a healthcare background, we always have goals that are measurable, and I know we attacked that for the past 2 years, and it's very difficult to sometimes put some quantitative value onto these. So we do the best we can and then move forward. But and the strategic goals that were put there, again, we really can't. I agree that they should be more in a grammatically correct fashion, but I think the way that they're on the strategic plan is, like for finance, is just finance. Saying finance doesn't necessarily mean it's a goal, but if you look at the strategic plan, there's a lot of supporting documents or language under it, which makes it just sort of the heading of the category. So let's just go through first, students first and foremost. If anyone has any ideas, including Roger, Dana, if you have any thoughts, ideas, these are the board's goals, objectives. However, I know that Roger, you sort of used these for foundation last year of your performance assessment. So, which is appreciative. So I guess the first thing there is support, or some other verb, students to immerse in 2-year pandemic learning and living. I like the thought. I guess I'd like to see that more spelled out as far as exactly what people are who was that, I see Joan's name popping up. That's probably because you're just on it right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, did you put that in, Colleen, or was that Martha?
monitored? Yeah, I wasn't sure what we were looking for.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what.
If
Monitor's not great either, so I don't know, there has to be something else that sounds better than that too.
right, and can we as a board affect that? I guess that's the other question. We certainly are supportive of administration and the staff, teachers and staff, but is there something we can directly do towards making sure that our student population, as well as the staff, emerge from this pandemic and get back into some semblance of normalcy? That's a question mark.
It's tough because even on that one, I mean, if you're just looking at a local level, yes, they were somewhat affected. Compare our district to anything even within New York State or across the country, we were pretty well spared here. So I don't know how stand out that particular bullet is. I don't know. I think as Roger was saying earlier in his discussion that we were pretty unscathed just based on how we were able to maintain being open and everything. So I'm sure that there's some effect, but certainly not what other areas have experienced.
Let's see.
I'm just thinking as you're, loud, I'm thinking.
Sure.
Maybe in here you're talking about identifying, any students who are in need of additional support, and then maybe as a board, providing resources to support them. Thinking of things like, so we have additional resources from the federal government, using some of that for, if it's academic, maybe it's for an after-school tutoring program. If it's mental health, maybe it's providing additional mental health support. Something like that.
Do we have a timeline where this has to be finalized?
No, I looked back last year and I believe we approved it our first meeting in August, perhaps.
Maybe like
So,
that, or
later.
I was gonna say.
Might have
later.
been.
one year was November, but
Yeah.
last year was early.
I'm just wondering if we should take more time since, a lot of people didn't have a chance to really, and, put
I'm-
information in that maybe we should.
I'm willing to allow that as long as people are going to take the time and do it.
Some of us were having technical difficulties. I don't know. I've never had a problem before, but it's something just goofy acting. So I don't know,
Yeah.
but I just think that maybe some of us would want
Okay,
some additional time to go in. That's
That-
just my thought.
that's perfectly fine. Is everybody in agreement with that? Would you like to try each person just trying to come up with one bullet point for each section, and that would be great. Roger gave 6 very important and applicable goals in your I don't know if that was your purpose or not, but it certainly struck home with me, the enrollment loss and working together with whatever housing authority they come up with in this area, to make sure that we're looking at families and that type of thing. The opportunity gap, we have something in here already, but elaborate on that. The facilities, I agree. I think it's probably not going to be next year, but I'm sure the way Dana's going here, if he'll have enough money for us in a couple of years to rebuild this, but at least look at a plan. And I think I know you'll have to work very closely to say, you can't, we're already bonded for X. We can't afford any more.
I think this building would be unaidable. It has no
Yeah.
student footprint.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Although it could have student footprint.
mhm.
Build it bigger.
Use the bond.
Yeah, but it's everything.
Elaborate more on the academic vibrancy. Yeah. So, okay. So I'm fine with that. I'm very much opposed to sitting here going through this piece by piece. I think better at 5 o'clock in the morning than at 7 o'clock at night as well. So,
Did you pull that, what you're talking about, off of, what Roger started for his evaluation last year that you were referring to?
the 6 bullets?
Yeah.
No, what he just went over tonight.
Okay.
I think there were 6. That's what I got anyway.
Maybe we can.
I had 6.
Okay. Okay, so
Is that the
Go ahead.
equivalent of copying off the other kids'
It
paper?
is.
We'll get a message right now. Taking notes.
Okay, so we'll leave this open. And does everybody know how to use it now? And I think that should have been. And I'm sure you can hold your cursor on a highlighted area and it will show you who commented on it. And please try to be as, try to put some value to it. How measurable is it? Can it be measured? So,
Do you want to keep
All
it
right.
the top level bullets, or do you want, if things are related, but we can expound on something,
Sure.
you want sub bullets?
oh, very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, anything. This is our document, so. Okay, great. Let's see, minutes is consent. Coaching staff for the fall is consent. Action items, B is personnel. The appointment of a bus driver. I like that heading. Recommended action upon recommendation of the superintendent, approve the appointment of John Flanagan as a 10-month bus driver, 5 hours a day, for a 1-year probationary appointment beginning on September 1st, 2021 and ending on August 31st, 2022. Salary is calculated at the CSEA salary schedule for the 2021-22 school year. The salary will be step 1 bus driver at the rate of $18.20 per hour. May I have a motion to accept this appointment?
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. Second?
Yes.
Thank you, Joan. Any discussion?
I would just add, Mr. Flanagan's been an active member of our school community for a number of years as a parent. And we're just thrilled that he was interested in this position. He's very excited.
Great. I read his name and I had to read it several times just to make sure. That's great. So, no more discussion, please vote. Okay, 5 yes, no against, the motion passes. Teaching assistant leave of absence, upon recommendation of the superintendent, approve an unpaid leave of absence of Marjorie Watterson, teaching assistant at the middle and high school for the 2021-2022 school year. May I have a motion to accept this leave of absence?
Yes.
Thank you, Joan. Second by Colleen. Any discussions or questions on this? If not, I'll ask you to vote as well.
Yes.
Okay, 5 yes, 0 no, so the motion passes. I will say that, Roger, your backup material is excellent, and it covers all our questions. It covers my questions anyway, so keep it up.
Thanks.
The reapproval of the management confidential is consent. Additional action items, special education is consent. Good of the cause. Special education, are there any questions on the August 10th packet?
The August 10th packet might be your last large packet. 30 student programs are in that packet. The 35 and the one you just approved.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
it's
do
large.
believe that the one after that's going to be much smaller. So,
Good.
It's always nice when that tide turns every year.
I'll throw it in here for a question. Special education, have we picked up many students so far as we're entering this new school year? I know we pick up some over the summer, move into the area.
I'm
So
not familiar with any significant change in that.
okay,
You're right, every year we pick up new students, and we already had prepared for new students who are coming up to kindergarten age.
right.
But we've already been serving those students in their pre-K environment.
Mhm.
So we've already talked about that. We've already staffed for that.
Right.
And we're prepared for that. But as far as moving in, I think it's I don't think it's an unusual year.
Okay, good.
Not yet.
That'll be August 1st, right?
Good of the cause.
No emails.
No emails. Thank you. Adjournment phase of the meeting. Our next meeting dates and our August 10th is our regular meeting. And August 17th is always a, if necessary, meeting. Old agenda items. New agenda items. I'll just throw in here that I made the decision late last week after probably 6 months of agony and thought process and to resign from the BOCES board. I just don't have the time and energy and it was a difficult decision, but after it was made, just a weight was, it was incredible. So, so I'm sure they'll be looking through probably Mr. Seymour to find somebody for this district or Long Lake is unrepresented as well. Anything else?
I think it just begs to be said, Rick, that however many years you've been in the BOCES board, every one of those years was a bonus and a benefit that, we know, okay, everybody knows it was above and beyond.
Oh, thank you.
And just doing all that you did is tremendous. I just want to say from all of us, thank you for what you
Oh,
did.
thank you.
Support us, represent us in the BOCES board.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Rick.
They pay mileage, by the way, if you're interested. Adjournment of the meeting. Recommended action is a motion to adjourn. I have a motion. Dan?
Second.
Second, Danielle. I shouldn't say it like that, should I?
I feel like I'm
Danielle.
I feel like I'm back in French class. Should have voted no.
I guess.
7:22. Oh, thank you. She doesn't want cars driving up.
Right? When's your last day, Roger?
Last day of July.
Okay.
How are you